my friends, welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, we're going to get a look at the Q&A from the developers. It's a special Q&A about matchmaking. And, you know, obviously I've got a few questions because I've been in two top-tier kingdoms at this point that would point to the matchmaking and say, this was the source of our downfall. This was in 1254, and here we are in 2377. Not that we're like in a, you know, like downfall per se, but like a bunch of people are leaving, a bunch of new people are coming in, and the king retired over it. All right. The king, they didn't quit the game, but he's, you know, gone somewhere else. All right. So, and the whole leadership, not the whole leadership team, but a bunch of the leadership team was like, no, we're good. We don't need to do this anymore. It's a big deal. Okay. So, Gloria says, greetings, Governor. Recently, we've seen widespread discussions among players regarding matchmaking. We've carefully reviewed these discussions and analyzed the key issues raised. We'd like to provide our responses to clarify the current state of matchmaking to address your concerns. If you have any thoughts or questions about what we've discussed today, please don't hesitate to voice them in the community. Your feedback will continue to be invaluable as we fine-tune our plans for the future. Cool. I obviously have a lot of thoughts. I shared those in a prior video. I will weave them in, but let's start with what they've said here. So, question. KVK matchmaking needs work. There isn't enough transparency around how matchmaking works, and the statistical gap between camps is too wide, affecting the overall gameplay experience. Let me say this in response to the question is, if players can't figure out why matchmaking is doing what it's doing, then they're just going to say it's unfair. It doesn't matter how fair it might be, according to back-end data. All that matters largely is player perception, and does the way that it plays out match player perception? In recent history, I've been in multiple KVKs where like any player would look at it and the matchmaking wouldn't have passed the common sense check. And then the KVK unfolds in exactly the way that all the players looking at it said it would go, right? So like that's the kind of matchmaking concern that I think is kind of troublesome, where it does not matter what the data is in the back end if the front end doesn't look like it makes sense, and then the reality of how it plays out is exactly the way that players predicted it would play out. So thank you for your feedback. We sincerely apologize for the unsatisfactory experience some players encountered during recent KVKs. By the way, it is worth mentioning in response to this, and I know I'm taking forever to actually read their question, but like, I don't know if this is a problem that smaller kingdoms have. All I know is that it's a problem that I've had in being in some of the biggest kingdoms in the game. Regarding the issue of data transparency, we found that the data that most governors are concerned about is not often the data we actually use for matchmaking. Our actual matchmaking algorithm is primarily based on the following factors from highest to lowest priority: overall progression of active governors, number of active open field governors, peak recent power of active governors, recent battle performance of active governors, and crystal tech progression, among other relevant data. However, since this data is not readily accessible, many governors focus on broader factors like total kingdom power and historic kill points. This often resulted in matches that seem more skewed than they might actually be. We plan to make more matchmaking related data available through the Rise of Kingdoms toolkit. There's a Rise of Kingdoms toolkit. You all know that I've had an ROK toolkit linked in the description of every one of my videos since like the beginning of time. That's kind of funny. So they have an ROK toolkit as well. I think that's the in-game statistics and analysis. That's funny. Wow, exact same name I used. Through the ROK toolkit, so governors can better understand the factors behind matchmaking results. I mean, I've already shared my thoughts here, which is that if players think a match is going to go a certain way based on the factors we look at, and then it keeps going that way, like, players don't care about all this. They don't. This may be more accurate, but if it isn't getting more accurate results for KVKs, then like, is it more accurate? I think these are cool factors, for sure. I get why they would look at these things, and these are cool things to look at. So I'm not saying these are the wrong things to look at. I'm saying, so how do we keep ending up in these situations where like 2377 had to 3v1? And like, to some extent, perception is reality. So if players can't perceive the fairness, then the reality becomes unfairness, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Just old man YouTubing. What do I know? With the number of Super Imperium kingdoms decreasing, KVK registration is way too frequent. We consider reducing the frequency of KVK registration and reducing the number of maps. Having more kingdoms in the matchmaking pool could improve matchmaking quality. It's almost like this is exactly what I've been asking for for literally, is it years now? We've previously adjusted KVK frequency, but feedback from governors and community discussions showed a wide range of opinions on that change. In the near future, we'll conduct another survey specifically on KVK registration frequency to gather more governor input. Based on survey results, we'll make adjustments that better meet the needs of the community. I mean, I feel like a broken record here, but the more kingdoms in the pool, the better potential for matchmaking to find kingdoms that are evenly matched and suited for each other. So to me, this is like the easiest slam dunk no-brainer of a decision. The only thing that if I were a developer of a game might interfere with that is like, well, if there's less KVK frequency, does that mean, you know, people are in KVK less and they're spending less on crystal tech? And I'm sure there are considerations beyond what I'm looking at, but I'm looking purely from a matchmaking quality standpoint. And it's like, hey, you know what makes matchmaking easier? A bigger pool of kingdoms to choose from. So that's my stance on that. I feel like that will always be an elevation. If there was not a sufficient number of kingdoms to choose from, which I think is true, just given my last KVK in 2377, where you've got like 3 kingdoms with super imperiums or 3 war camps with super imperiums and 1 that doesn't. What I think they should have done in that situation, in my opinion, is made one of the super imperiums sit out, unfortunately. So you'd basically have a super imperium war camp that could ally with like a AAA, and then another super imperium and another AAA. And it's like really obvious how that's supposed to go. And if the super imperiums ally up, then they're effing sissies and they deserve not to exist. All right. Anyways, the new crystal technology rework has magnified numerical advantages. Our kingdom has fewer people and often struggles to face off against larger kingdoms. I do not think that the new crystal technology has done that. I mean, I guess it's easier to get more march size now. I just really don't think that the new crystal technology moved the needle in a meaningful way there. We're aware of the battlefield changes caused by crystal tech rework. Going forward, we plan to adjust the weight that active governor population carries in the matchmaking algorithm to better accommodate the current KVK environment. Okay. Camp balance should be better ensured during matchmaking. Situations where one camp disproportionately strong or weak, such as 3 strong, 1 weak, or 3 weak, 1 strong, should be avoided. Yeah, let's please avoid the situation where 2377 gets 3v1'd again. And why did that happen? Because everybody looked at it and they were like, our options are one of us gets to ally with them and win, or we all ally together against them. It's just like, it doesn't make for better KVKs. This is so important. Thank you for the suggestion. Our matchmaking algorithm primarily considers overall statistical balance. However, we understand that from a governor's perspective, even if a large camp is composed of multiple kingdoms and is balanced statistically, it can be difficult to compete against Imperium Kingdom camps with similar stats. Look, all players figure this out, okay? Everybody looks at the kingdoms and they know what's going on, but somehow the matchmaking algorithm can't figure out the same thing that players can figure out. And the thing is that although the algorithm might work and be more accurate in a world in which all that matters is the statistics, it turns out that because humans are the ones making choices in these KVKs, and we're very emotional beings compared to algorithms, perception becomes the reality. So if a kingdom thinks it can't win, it doesn't matter if statistically they're even. They're going to lose. That's just that. That's all that it is. It doesn't matter. And the players don't believe necessarily in algorithms providing balanced KVKs. And so, you know, like, unless you proved algorithmically to the players at the time of matchmaking that they statistically had this even chance, if they don't believe they have the even chance, then they will not have an even chance, even if they would have otherwise. Belief is crucial. So it just, you know, like, the perception, I think, is the piece of the puzzle here that is so important to account for. In the future, we plan to adjust the algorithm to account for these situations, aiming to make camp compositions more balanced, achieving an even 4-camp distribution, 2 strong, 2 weak balance. Yeah, I mean, it's like, make it make it obvious for players what's going on. Now, that said, what's going to happen with a 2-weak or a too strong, too weak balance is that now you're going to have the too strong allying up like a bunch of sissies. And so I think the thing to consider here is you should have 4 war camps. Like, we need to get out of this situation. We need to be out of the too strong, too weak situation completely. This should never happen ever again. The only reason it should happen is if we're at the very, 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 very top end, because there just don't exist the kingdoms to do a 4 strong. But it should always be 4 equal war camps. That should always be what it should be. So it literally does not matter who allies who, other than perception. That should the only difference for who allies who should just be like, oh, I believe this one is stronger than that one, or like whatever. But like all 4 war camps should all be balanced equally, so that you always get a good 2v2, regardless of who allies who. That's my opinion on that one. Pilots have an outsized impact on the current KVK ecosystem. Without them, it's difficult to stay competitive, but relying on them also makes it hard to maintain a stable, connected community. Preach. True. I mean, couldn't be more true, man. We'll soon be adding a War Frenzy duration limit, which will curtail excessively long open field battles. This feature will be pioneer tested in a handful of newly opened KVKs. Based on player feedback and test results, we'll make further improvements and be rolling it out to all kingdoms. In addition, we'll continue experimenting with adjustments to the battlefield environment and KVK pacing to help mitigate the impact of piloting on the overall ecosystem. This is a 24/7 war game. And the very, 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 very obvious way to juice up your kingdom is if you can't add more players, you make the players you have be online more. So as soon as the game started to curtail migration capabilities, and as kingdoms shrank in size, and so Imperium migration got smaller and smaller, etc., as soon as that whole domino effect got put into play, it put into play then the need to make you get more as a king out of every player that is in your kingdom already. Piloting was the obvious, staring in our face, slapping us in the face answer to that, right? We'll just get the people. Who cares if just get some chump in the seat playing the account, right? And this has led to some weirdness where, like, I've seen kings, just running around trying to get people to kind of, I mean, I'm just going to say it, just whore out their account to some random person who will play it for them, right? Just like, let some asshole on there. We got to go. And it's like, dude, like, I get why the kings are doing it, but like, I do not think that makes for a healthier game environment personally. So the War Frenzy duration limit, I think, is a step in the right direction. I don't know what that limit's going to be. Pick a number in a time frame. It still lets you fill, I guess, if you have a frenzy duration limit, right? Like, I don't know. Anything they do to solve the problem or take steps towards solving the problem is an absolute W. I think this is a step towards solving the problem. The piloting situation is weird for a million reasons, which I've talked about in prior vids, but community... stable, connected community is like, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. Can you improve the reward mechanics of KVK? Right now, the cost of losing is too high, and many kingdoms try to ensure safer outcomes through diplomacy. This has completely screwed me, by the way. I am hopelessly far behind on Artarks. I am hopelessly behind on conquest coins. I'm screwed. My account's screwed for what it should be. It is, in a world in which a bunch of people in other places are like, what the hell do I do with all these stupid autarks? I'm effed over here. I don't even have the majority of my marches with the scroll autark. I'm screwed. I have been screwed. And yeah, like, the cost is way too high for losing. And there's no comeback. You're just cooked. So as someone who personally, like, really feels this pain, and every time I look at my account, I'm like, Yeah, like I'm just behind everybody. Cool. And then I'm in these 3v1 KVKs, and these, the KVK I was just in was purely performative, right? It was, everybody knew from the very start, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and try to pretend otherwise. It was purely performative. We go and fight because we wanted to fight, but everybody knew kind of what the outcome would be, right? So when, I keep being in these situations, and like, yeah, my account is screwed. And, it's still, people would look at it and go, that's a goddamn good account. And you're like, yeah, I've done a really good job with what I have. But like, if I was up 3 autarchs from where I am, it'd be a totally different world for me. And if I was up, like 18 conquest coins, or yeah, that's way too many, but like, 12 conquest coins, 8 conquest coins, like I'd have some better gear. So, yeah, it's really cooked my account. Thanks for the suggestion. We're aware that in some Lost Kingdoms, diplomacy has led to guaranteed victories, which is not the kind of gameplay experience we intended for. We're currently exploring adjustments in the KVK reward system to help reduce such situations and improve the overall experience in Lost Kingdom. We'll share more details. 2 easy answers here. First of all, they added a pity system where if you lose 3 KVKs, you can get an autarch. But they didn't go back and give people autarchs for historic losses. That's a part of the reason I'm so cooked. This is like, oh, well, they added a pity system. Well, I had 3 losses before they even added that shit. So I'm like, okay, like it's awesome because I'm gonna actually get a pity autarch right now. But like the pity autarch speed, you're still so hopelessly far behind. It feels like, I don't know, maybe I just care too much. Maybe it's just like the get value and smash your enemies part of me, right? It feels like I've missed out on so catastrophically much value, even though it probably isn't that in reality. It just feels that way, that like, I don't know, like, should I be feeling that way? Like, and here's the thing. It's not even hard to avoid this situation from a matchmaking standpoint with the guaranteed victories. I already gave the answer. The answer is you can't have 2 strong, 2 weak. You just need 4 equal camps. What are we talking about? Doesn't that solve the problem? If there's 4 equal camps, it doesn't matter who allies who. And then you don't have Diplo guaranteed victories. You just have who wants to play with who as an ally. And like, maybe one team does better than another, but like, if you actually had 4 equal strength camps, you don't have this problem. It's great that the devs are looking at this. It is encouraging. I mean, I see a lot of like thumbs down and clown emojis and noob fest and right. Like, I think this post, no matter what they said, was going to generate just a huge amount of negativity. It just is what it is, because like, if you've been through one of the matchmaking situations once, just once over the course of your rock career, like, I live for the rest of time with got screwed in the 3v1 situation on my resume, right? Like, I don't get to walk away from that. And, like the 1254 kingdom dies over matchmaking. Like, I don't get to walk away from that. I'd live with that on my resume for the rest of time. And people are like, it's another kingdom Chisgule screwed over. It's like, I had nothing to do with matchmaking, man. So like, each one of these situations is a really, really, really big deal for the players that go through them. And I think that I've had a disproportionately high number of those because I think this problem is primarily in the biggest of kingdoms. That is my suspicion. But you let me know down below in the comments. Is that true or is that not true? And as a follow-up to this, there were like 2 or 3 things where I thought, I would make a community poll about this and see what players think. So I'm going to revisit what I thought here and make a community poll or 2 in the coming days and just share my thoughts. I'll be interested in your reactions to those polls and your responses to those polls. So be on the lookout for some matchmaking related polls. If you want to see my last vid on matchmaking, I'll have a card in the end screen over here. I still, I don't know. I don't want to seem like I'm crashing out about Rise of Kingdoms, but like, like when you lose, it sucks, but it really sucks if you felt like for the 40 plus days you were in the KVK, that outcome was an inevitability and you're just performatively going through the motions, but in your heart, that you're just spending 50 days in the KVK, only to at the end of it be like, well, Kingdom's going to lose a bunch of players and this, that, the other thing. And it's like, this is why I said long ago, by the way, that I felt like KVKs need to be shorter than they are. Because when you get, this is the other side of the problem, is that if you get into a bad matchmaking situation, you're stuck for like 50 days. That's like 2 months of feeling like, what am I doing here? And that's not ideal. But anyways, the devs are looking at it. I think they're thinking about some of the right things. And my nudge would be perception is reality. And my nudge would be, what if there were no bad ally outcomes? Just like fair fights. Any 2v2 will do. That would be a W. And like, to make that true, like, it needs to be from a data standpoint true and from a perception standpoint true. Right? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, old man Chisgule. Can't even walk right now. I hope I can walk soon, by the way. This cancer recovery is effing sucking. It sucks. But maybe I'll get the results soon. I'm looking at my phone now. Do I have a phone call? No. I'm expecting them, could happen anytime now. So fingers crossed we get the good news, all clear, blah, blah, blah. Enough rambling out of you, Chisgule. Check the cards in the end screen, actually. Till next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.